Every single year, some of the most powerful people on the planet, we're talking heads of state, CEOs, top thinkers, media bosses, they all get together in this tiny, remote town in the Swiss Alps. They're there to talk about the biggest problems facing all of us. This is the World Economic Forum, but you've probably heard it called by its other name, Davos.
So yeah, for a few days every winter, this beautiful little ski town completely transforms. It becomes the absolute nerve center of global power and influence. And that, of course, raises a huge question. What is actually going on behind those closed doors? And why should any of us care about a super exclusive meeting tucked away in the mountains?
Okay, so to really get what Davos is all about, we got to start with the basics. Who's running the show, and maybe more importantly, who actually gets that golden ticket to attend? Well, what we call Davos is really the big annual meeting for the World Economic Forum, or the WEF for short. It's an international nonprofit that was started way back in 1971 by a German professor named Klaus Schwab. And right from the jump, the core idea was to get the public sector, governments, and the private sector, businesses, to work together on global issues.
But here's the thing, you can't just buy a ticket. No way. This is a super curated, invite-only event for about 3,000 people. Just think about who that is. Presidents, prime ministers, the CEOs of the 1,000 biggest companies in the world, leading academics, heads of major nonprofits. By its very design, it is a club for the global elite.
So, what's the official reason for bringing all these heavy hitters together in one place? Let's peel back that next layer and take a look at the WEF's stated mission.
On paper, the mission sounds, pretty noble and ambitious, right? The WEF says its whole purpose is to improve the state of the world, and their method for doing that is collaboration, getting all these different leaders into the same room to hash out solutions for everything from climate change to the global economy.
Now, the big idea that drives this whole mission is something called stakeholder capitalism. And this isn't some new buzzword for them. They were talking about this at the very first meeting in 1971. The concept is that a company shouldn't just be focused on making money for its shareholders, it should be creating value for everyone involved, its employees, its community, and even the planet.
It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? A big, collaborative effort to solve humanity's greatest challenges. But that official story? Well, it might only be half the picture. And this, right here, is where the whole debate gets really, really interesting.
And that brings us to this really powerful counter-narrative. See, for decades, critics have been arguing that far from solving the world's problems, Davos might actually be making them worse.
To get this critique, you have to understand the term Davos man. It was coined by the political scientist Samuel P. Huntington, and it describes this kind of global elite, someone who is so wealthy and so internationally connected that they have more in common with each other, whether they're from New York, London, or Tokyo, than they do with their own countrymen. For Davos man, national borders are just annoying obstacles getting in the way of global business.
This quote from the Transnational Institute just nails the core critique perfectly. It argues that the WEF has basically become a way for corporate interests to get a huge, almost unprecedented level of influence over how the world is run. Critics call it corporate capture. And in this analogy, the camel, which represents private money and power, isn't just poking its nose into the tent of global governance, it's taking the whole thing over.
So the critics point to the WEF's big push for what it calls multi-stakeholder governance. The argument goes that nation-states just can't handle today's global problems alone, so we need these big coalitions of corporations, governments, and civil society to manage things. But the criticism is so sharp. Who elected these people? There's zero democratic accountability. It creates a system where corporations can kind of pick and choose which rules they want to follow, and at the end of the day, the real decision-making power ends up with whoever has the most money and the best connections.
So you can see this deep, fundamental conflict between what Davos says it is and what its critics say it's actually become. Is it a forum for good, or is it just a private club for the rich and powerful?
So you really have these two totally opposing views. On one side, you have the WEF's official language of public-private cooperation and improving the world, and on the other, you have these stark accusations of corporate capture, a dangerous lack of transparency, and the feeling that it's actually eroding democracy itself.
Now look, to be fair, the WEF can point to some real diplomatic achievements over the years. In 1988, it helped Greece and Turkey pull back from the brink of war. In 92, it was the stage for a really historic joint appearance by Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk. And in 1994, it helped broker a key agreement between Israeli and Palestinian leaders. So there are these moments where you can say, hey, the Davos model really seemed to work.
But, a few success stories are one thing. The systemic critique is about something much, much bigger. It's about the fundamental economic model that so many of the people who go to Davos seem to champion.
And this argument right here cuts straight to the bone. Critics like Ingrid Robins argue that the entire system of neoliberal capitalism, with its focus on deregulation and free markets, the very system that has made so many Davos attendees incredibly wealthy, is also the main thing driving the massive wealth inequality that's destabilizing our societies and eating away at democracy. And that leads to a really fundamental question. Can the architects of a problem also be the ones to solve it?
So, with all of this intense debate swirling around, where is the World Economic Forum heading next? What are the world's elite planning to talk about now?
While the theme for the upcoming annual meeting in 2026 is a spirit of dialogue. That pretty much tells you they recognize that the world is more fragmented and divided than ever, and that getting people to cooperate is both more crucial and way more difficult than it's been in a long time.
And if you take a quick look at their agenda, it's basically a list of the world's biggest headaches. We're talking about how to cooperate in a world full of conflict, how to find new ways for economies to grow, how to invest in people in the age of AI, how to manage that technology responsibly, and of course, how to tackle climate change.
And that brings us right back to that huge fundamental question. Is Davos a genuine platform for solving the world's most urgent problems? Or, at the end of the day, is it a private club where the powerful get together to protect their influence and shape a world that mainly works for them? After hearing both sides, that's the question we'll leave with you.